Good evening and welcome to another Blues Talking at Henry's Blues House, Birmingham. This Tuesday we've got a man who I've known for many years, but I just realised today I don't know very much about him. That's all about to change. One of the pillars of the Birmingham music industry for many years, musician, entrepreneur, teacher, educator, all-round good guy, is Geoff Pearce. Let's welcome him.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Now, Geoff, from your posh accent, you clearly don't come from around Birmingham.
No. I come from Chingford. When I was born in Chingford, it was in Essex. Then a few years later, they moved it into London. So it's kind of East London.
So what brought you to Birmingham?
Work, really, as a musician. I was working as a musician. A kind of gigging musician, reading dots and playing theatres and dance halls and that kind of thing. And there was a lot of work up here, and I had some friends up here, so I moved up. Only temporarily. I thought maybe 6 months, a year, I'll move back.
And how long has it been?
40 years. I moved back next week.
You've been saying that for years.
If I could afford a house down there.
Let's go back a bit. So, how did you first encounter music in general? Not specifically blues or jazz, but music in general. How did you first encounter music?
I first encountered music really seriously when I was 14, and that autumn my mother and father had bought a Grundig tape recorder, and accidentally my older brother, who was never interested in music and still isn't, accidentally recorded some Radio Luxembourg, and I just caught hold of it, and I remember listening to tunes like Running Bear and Battle of New Orleans by Ronnie Donegan, and at that point I was completely hooked.
Great. So it was sort of bluesish to begin with, wasn't it?
It was the charts,
But it was a lot of skill came out of the blues, and certainly Johnny Preston.
absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
So at that time you weren't playing, I presume?
No. I'd got a guitar, but I wasn't playing it because I couldn't tune it.
Well, tell us, take us through. You heard Running Bear and Ronnie Donegan, and that sparked your interest. And what happened next to you?
Well,
Buy
okay,
records or?
Yeah, so I kind of got interested in music, seriously interested in music, ridiculously interested in music. And during that year, I can't remember the year, but I was 14, the Shadows kind of broke. I was never very interested in Cliff Richard, but the Shadows really turned me on. It was guitars and it was great, and they came out with a #1 hit called Apache. I sort of redoubled my efforts to tune my guitar, but I still failed. But I bought every Shadows record from that point onwards, and a few other records. And basically, it was 2 years later, when I was 16, I managed to play Night Rider in the Sky on one string on the guitar, and that was it. Soon after that, I managed to tune the guitar and played it properly, but by then I was really hooked on popular music. But then of course things changed in the early 60s, because we had this situation where the Beatles broke, who were very heavily influenced by American soul records and blues records. And then soon after that, which was really the turning point for me, the Rolling Stones came on the scene. And they used to have something on BBC Radio in those days, the night programme. There was only 2 stations on BBC Radio. If you listen to the radio, Radio Luxembourg is what you listen to, because that played all the pop records. But BBC Radio was the light programme and the home service. The home service is kind of a bit like Radio 5 and Radio 4 entwined, but the light programme was Radio 1 and Radio 2. So you had this program, and they had it on Saturday mornings. They had Saturday Morning Club, and they just had live music in the studio for 2 hours every morning. And the Rolling Stones were often, lots of people, the Beatles were on it, loads of people were on it, but the Rolling Stones were on it, and that's what really sort of turned me on to the blues, because they did a lot of covers, not whatever, originally a blues band. And they played a lot of Chuck Berry, I remember. I really got into Chuck Berry, and I just started buying Chuck Berry records.
That's a good song. Of course, the Stones were really, I think, they're the people behind the British Blues movement. They fell in love with chess records. They went to Chicago. They recorded 2120 South Michigan Avenue, which is the old Jazz Studios, called the album 2120 South Michigan. And they came back with all this wonderful music and they turned a generation onto the music.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. But you also talked to me earlier on about some other big name guitar player.
Well, where I lived in Chingford, which was next to Walthamstow, which is still there, as a schoolboy, I started getting interested in music. I wanted to go and see live music. And there's a place called Walthamstow Assembly Hall, which was built in the 1930s, as a concert hall, basically. And every Friday night, they put on music for basically youngsters. There was no bar there, didn't have a license. You could get orange juice, Coca-Cola, crisps, stuff like that. And we'd go down there. And over a couple of years that I was actually attending it, I saw quite a lot of bands. When the Beatles broke, I saw the Mersey Beats down there, I saw the Foremost down there, I saw a lot of quite famous bands. But the one band that I remember most of all, that was continually down there, topping the bill, I don't know why, maybe they just couldn't get anyone else to play down there, but they seemed to be like almost like a resident down there, was Neil Christian and the Crusaders. I don't know if anyone's heard of Neil Christian and the Crusaders, probably not. But he had a guitarist at that point. He actually went through quite a good lineup of musicians, did Neil Christian. He was never a great singer. He was obviously into his rock and roll. But he had Jimmy Page. When I was going there, Jimmy Page. And I got to actually meet Jimmy Page, sit backstage, and actually try out his Black Gibson Les Paul in the back room. It was really, really good. But so I got to know Jimmy Page quite well. I would see that. And of course, Jimmy Page was influenced by all those blues players, as we know, as he went on to play with Led Zeppelin, particularly Hubert Sumlin, which was a favourite blues player of mine, who some years later, at Leytonstone, the Red Line in Leytonstone, I went to see a guy called Jimmy Reed, who I think you must be familiar with. And on guitar, it was a four-piece band. On guitar was Hubert Sumlin. He's just always been one of my favourite players. You know.
Me too, funny enough. For me, he's one of Muddy's best ever guitar players.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a
Excuse me, interrupt. A little plug here. Next week, guitar players featured who actually was in Hubert Sumlin's band back in the 1970s. So, sorry, back to Geoff Pearce.
There's a particular track that really struck me, that really turned on to Hubert Sumlin, and that's because he played with Howlin' Wolf continually, recorded with him. And there's a particular track, Going Down Slow. You probably know the track.
Yeah.
And I had it on a Pie EP. It was 4 tracks by Howlin' Wolf. Still see the label now. And on that track, there's a long introduction that Howlin' Wolf does on that, like talking and whatever. And then he goes into the first verse. And then Hubert Sumlin hits a note after the first line in the first verse, and it's like a flat 5. But the way he hits that note and moves that note around is just like, it just turned me on to Hubert Sumlin forever. I just think it's great. And actually to see him in the Red Line in Leytonstone was just totally brilliant. I checked out the Red Line when I was thinking about all these things, and it's still a music venue. Upstairs, it's still a music venue. But coming back to Jimmy Page, I mean, one amazing thing about Jimmy Page, when I left school, they always had a dance at the end of term, and the dance, like, who's on? Oh, it's Neil Christian and the Crusaders with Jimmy Page. And I watched Jimmy Page right from a distance of 6 feet, because they only had about a 50-minute set, basically. So they put in a load of instrumentals to fill it out. And Jimmy Page, I mean, what a guitarist he was at that point. I met Jimmy Page, actually, again, some years later, back in 1984, many years later. I didn't remind him who I was. He would never have remembered me, obviously. But I did meet him at a benefit concert in Nottingham for Alexis Corner. When Alexis Corner died in 84, I think, they put on a benefit concert there, and he was playing there along with the Rolling Stones drummer, Charlie Watts, and Ian Stewart from the Rolling Stones, the keyboard player that was never in the Rolling Stones but was always in the Rolling Stones.
The Sixth Stone, wasn't he?
The Sixth Stone, yeah. and Dick Hexel-Smith on, you remember? Yeah. Oh, Jack Bruce on bass. Now,
So they couldn't get the good guys.
sorry?
So they couldn't get
No, they had to fill in with the depths and that. But no, I went to the rehearsal, and the reason I was there was because I was there with Ruby Turner, because she'd been invited to be as Alexis. I met Alexis some years before. I'd started managing Ruby, playing with Ruby, putting a band together. I don't know if you know Ruby, but she's a kind of soul singer. You can catch her with Jules Holland a lot and stuff like that. But basically, I'd started working with Ruby, putting the band together, and then I started managing her. And, I suppose you call it managing, I don't know. But Alexis had taken a shine to Ruby, and he had a program on Radio 2, because in those days we actually had Radio 2. The live program, the home service had gone, courtesy of the radio stations in the channel. What were they called? Those pirate stations, you know. Courtesy of that, they'd set up Radio 1 with it. And he had a Sunday afternoon program, and we'd done an EP. This was vinyl, a 4-track vinyl 12-inch. Ruby had done, and we'd played on the record, and he played every track, one track at a time each Sunday. So he got to know Ruby. Came to a gig. We got to know Ruby. Went over to Holland and Belgium, I think, to do some shows with Alexis when he was on the road, and she was invited to do the 25th anniversary marquee show.
Oh, wow.
And that was great. Anyway, I forget where the story was, but
I'd like to go back a bit, because it's a great leap from you being unable to tune the guitar to being a musician good enough to play with Ruby Turner. So can we go back a bit, please, to when you first started to play seriously and join a band? So
Right.
what's the first band you joined? What were they playing? Are you a guitar player then, of course?
yes, I was a guitar player. I let it switch over to bass. There was more work around. The first public performance I ever did was just prior to the end of year show when Neil Christian came down to school. I played at the school concert. I finally managed to tune the guitar and played a couple of instrumentals, one which was a version of a pop song, I can't remember it. Brown. What was that guy that played? I forget his name. Anyway, from that, I went on to play, and we thought there was a mate of mine who played drums. He bought a kit of drums, and he played drums, and we tried to get another mate of ours to play bass. So we actually formed a band. It didn't work very well, but we met another guy that played guitar, and we formed a band. I think we called it the Chucker Beats or something like that. He didn't do too much, but very soon after, I joined a band called the Beat Syndicate. No, you won't know them. The Beat Syndicate. There was a guy that was leaving, the rhythm guitarist, and I knew the bass player, and I got invited to go over and play rhythm with this band called the Beat Syndicate. But it was great because suddenly I was out I can remember the first dates we ever did down in Kent, and then we used to do all these playing. In those days, the Americans were over here. They were still over here from the Second World War. So all around East Anglia and Ruislip and places like that, they had these air bases. And they were keen on music. Americans, for some reason, have always been keen on music. And so we used to play these bases all over Essex and Suffolk, Norfolk. These air bases would go down there. And it was a great grounding for a musician. Because, especially if you were like a rhythm section player, because essentially, instead of playing for an hour or something, these gigs lasted for 4 hours, and you'd get one break. So, getting those muscles together on the guitar, particularly holding those bar chords down. I mean, I was like, 17, I suppose? Trying to get those bar chords down. By the time you come off a few of those sessions, you'd really built those muscles up. So it was a great grounding. So the Beat Syndicate, but they were just one of the bands. Everywhere, every pub, well not every pub, but most pubs around the East End of London had these bands, and it was all due to this explosion of the beat groups, courtesy of the Beatles. So there was so much music everywhere, but it was all cover stuff. It was all playing the charts. That's what it was.
Were you professional at that time, or did you have a real job?
No, I was at school. Basically, I was at school, which kind of screwed up my A-levels, to be fair, because it was very difficult sort of working late. But I thought it was wonderful. I mean, when I started doing these gigs, I thought, this is great. This is absolutely wonderful. I'm going out at night, I'm playing, having a good time, and getting paid for it. Who the hell wants a job, you know? And I can quite remember a few years ago, someone was saying, talking about working and that, and experience in working. I said, well, listen, when I get a job, I'll let you know what it's like. Because I don't ever consider I've ever had a job, because it's just been music all the time.
But I think you have since. Let's take us up to the Ruby period. How do you get involved with Ruby? Because I mean, Ruby is a huge name in this country. Cheers.
I got involved with Ruby by going into I think it was called the Bass Place in the centre of Birmingham, and there was an advert, like they put adverts. There was a guy, a bass player called Craig, something like that. Anyway, he ran that place, and I think he's still around. I think he's still doing some stuff. But I went in there. There was an advert. It said wanted for soul singer, bass player, guitarist, keyboard player, saxophone, drummer, everything. So I thought, well, I'll try that out. So I phoned it up, and I managed to get an audition. The audition was in Moseley at the Fighting Cocks, upstairs in Moseley. And I went down there, and the first time I heard Ruby sing, she was, I don't know, she was teens, late teens. I thought, that voice, it's just so good. She needs to be internationally recognised. It's just a wonderful voice. Anyway, I got involved with that. I got the job, and then I managed to get the job as the musical director. So I put the band together, bit by bit, and it went from there.
And later on, when you stopped, why did you stop playing? Or why did you stop playing professionally, I should say?
I haven't stopped playing. I'm just not doing it at the moment. Basically.
You're still involved with Ruby, aren't you?
I still do some stuff with Ruby. I still organise
tour
their gigs. She's doing an album. She's done an album. It's going to come out in January. I'll sort all that out. You know, all the rest. So I'm still involved with Ruby. Yes. But basically, I played with Ruby. We put the band together. Bob Wilson, who you're going to be seeing very soon on this stage, was the guitarist. I think he was originally the keyboard player, but I think then he became the guitarist and worked with Ruby for many, many years. But during the 80s, she had a manager called Gareth Owen.
School teacher.
School teacher, yeah. That's it, And essentially, he kind of retired around the mid-80s, and I tried to help Ruby find a manager. In the end, I said, well, I'll manage you until you find a manager. So that's the way it works. And then we managed to move it on and get. She got a job. She started singing with the Culture Club for a couple of tours, which put her profile up, and we got a deal from there.
Do you think Jules Holland was her big break, or had she made it before that?
No, I mean she was already established before that, really. I mean the work that Jive Records kind of put in did actually raise her profile on a major level. So, but the Jules thing has given her a different platform, you know.
Let's leave Ruby and talk about your other off-stage activity, which is where I first encountered you.
Pardon?
Phil Savage? Did I jump too far? Is there something between?
Phil Savage.
Well, you did a really serious enterprise to do with trying to get the local music business together, which is not at all.
Oh, Music West Midlands. Yeah. Ah, right. Yes.
Right. Tell us about Music West Midlands. Was it your idea?
No, I don't think it was my idea. It was our idea, wasn't it? It was you, me, Phil, and Paul Birch. Yeah. But the idea is
there's certain words you cannot use in public, like Paul Birch.
Paul's all right. He's really nice. But essentially, Music West Midlands was something that it came together. What is it? 18, 19 years ago. The idea was to actually try and develop the music industry in the Midlands. I mean, there was a movement going on throughout the country of these organisations to try and develop music and try and get it funded. I mean, it's important. it's an important industry in this country, and the idea was to try and get it funded by various means. Various funding sources were available, you know. And now we're looking Brexit in the eye. I think that's probably the end of the music industry in this country.
Well, I'm not sure if that was. I think maybe. Anyway, let's not worry about that too much. So, but you were teaching for a long time, weren't you? Was that before you got involved with Music West Midlands?
No. Music West Midlands. I was involved. It was later on that I got involved in developing with Phil Savage the HND Music Performance, which was initially based in Hagley Road at Talkin's old school, in fact, and then was moved to Digbeth at the South Birmingham College.
Tell us about that. I mean, you produced a lot of young musicians. You had lots of music events there. It's an important venue to my mind.
Yeah. There was a lot. And we produced a lot of albums as well. I mean, one project that I was involved in via what was called in those days Learning Skills Council was it was called Managing Music, and essentially we had 3 tranches of 12 people involved in training them in music management. Several of who are still actually involved in the business nowadays, so some of them. The good thing about it was that there was investment into it, so we could actually help to develop their artists' careers by putting money into CDs, for instance, or recording sessions, or gig support, that kind of thing.
So, what about now? What are you doing now, Geoff?
What am I doing now?
I know you go to Tenerife now then for a gig with your son.
I still do a gig once a year in January in Tenerife with my son, who plays saxophone, who lives over there. I don't know why he lives over there, but he does. Well, apart from the fact it's warmer than here. So I don't do much playing anymore. I'm thinking about getting back into it, but I finally got back into management. I've got to say I kind of dropped out of doing management. I've always worked with Ruby. I still work with Ruby. But other stuff I was doing, I kind of dropped out of, but I've got back into it. So I've got a couple of acts that I'm working with now. Hannah Brown, who's kind of doing a bit on the local scene, and another guy from Bromsgrove called Ryan McMay, who I'm very keen on. So I've got back into management.
So, in a few words, tell us about Hannah Brown and Rob. What do they do? Hannah Brown.
Hannah, I met Hannah at college. She was a student, and I thought she had something about her that was very good. And I've worked with her for 4 or 5 years now, and she's developed as an artist, she developed as a songwriter, and developed very well. And a year ago, she was an acoustic artist, guitar. She plays good guitar and sings, and she did a lot of acoustic stuff. But in recent years, and I've worked with different producers and tried to develop the direction she wants to go in. And she's kind of, in the last year or so, she's really come together with a band. She's got a very good band, 4-piece band, drummer, bass player, guitarist behind her. And she's playing guitar and obviously lead vocals. And she's coming up with some very good stuff at the moment. And so she's kind of making a bit of a name for herself within the scene now.
Well, look out for her. What about, is it Rob McMay?
Ryan McMay was one half of the Fidgets. The Fidgets were a duo from Bromsgrove, basically, Bromsgrove, Worcester. And they're very, very heavily 60s influenced band, But unfortunately they split up, so we're managing Ryan now. I say we because I've got a partner called Steve Manley, and we're managing Ryan now, who is a very, very talented songwriter, and I think,
Well, we'll look out for those, and I'd like to thank you very much for your time on Blues Talking. Always nice to hear about Hubert Sumlin. I always had a soft spot for him, so thank you. Geoff.
Thank you, Geoff.